Okay.
AEIOU.
Oh, fuck. What are we talking about today?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, what we're talking about is urgent. So, if you haven't, gone on social media in the last, I would say 3 weeks,
Then you've got a really good life.
then I envy you immensely. But yeah, you probably noticed that we did a campaign called Not Urgent or Urgent. And the idea was, well, for one, we're an agency. I think we deal with a lot of customers on a day-to-day basis. We're launching our own startup. We did launch our own startup called No Bueno. And we live in a perpetual state of fucking panic. Everything is last minute. The briefs are last minute, not to mention that they're shit. But generally speaking, we live in a world of perpetual kind of urgency. And we decided that it was time to kind of call it out because it's not warranted. So, I mean, I know this comes off as potentially kind of against or aimed at some of our customers or greater community, and it somewhat is, but we hope people understand that the idea behind this campaign was not just to call them out, but to call ourselves out and to call the industry out on the fact that urgency doesn't help anybody. Yeah. And I think first let's just kind of set it up by explaining what we mean by urgency.
And also urgency as in not just the industry, but life in general has become very fast-paced, very urgent,
very
24/7. Yeah, 24/7 media, 24/7 like live on demand, social media, this constant fear of FOMO. So that has like expanded and really kind of penetrated into working life as well as personal life. And
there's a big difference between speed and urgency.
True.
And I think that's what we need to define, I think, a little bit. So when we say that not everything is urgent and urgency doesn't help anybody, we mean the act of trying to do things immediately without any prior kind of planning or thought or systems or processes in place. And so, speed, brands and people and all types of organizations can be fast.
Yep.
You can even be reactive, right?
You should be reactive.
Yeah, and you should be reactive, and it shouldn't come at the cost of what we're trying to argue is proper planning and proper systems and proper process.
Yep.
And so, just let's set it up kind of properly. We often get a brief or a scope or an RFP or some sort of a request for us to propose to and find a solution to that is, one, an incomplete brief, two, an inaccurate brief, or three, a kind of, let's say, unfounded or a brief that has no basis. And let's just explain that a little bit. So people come to us and they say, hey, we want to do a campaign. And we say, okay, cool, yeah, we'd love to. And they say, okay, we want to do an outdoor and 360 campaign. Amazing, awesome. When do you want to do it? We want it to go live in like 2 weeks. And we're like, but what do you mean 2 weeks? There's so much thinking, so much like preparation that has to go into place. And they say, yeah, but man, like, have you seen our competition in the streets? Like, they book like half of Sheikh Zayed and the Palm and like Jumeirah, and their brand is everywhere. Like, we need to compete. We need to be seen. Like, we're getting our asses handed to us.
Either that or well, they've already pre-booked. They've been sold some media, which is a real problem here. Sold some media space randomly throughout the year because the price was probably better, and therefore I have to fill this. I have to fill this media space.
Yeah. So the bros came to see them, and they said, "Yo, I got a great bridge banner for you.
Super good deal.
Yo, the best deal. One-time offer only."
Yeah.
Anyway, everyone falls for it.
Yeah.
They sell you a bridge banner for like cost. I'm only going to make you pay for cost, production cost. What is that? Oh, it's like 35,000 dirhams or 45,000 dirhams, whatever the fucking cost of the day is.
Yeah.
And then they come to us, these brands, and they say, hey, can you pull a rabbit out of a hat? And, to be fair, that is the status quo of how this agency-client relationship kind of lives most of the time. People only come to us in urgency. My brand needs to be refreshed. Why? Do you know why? Besides your assumptions? I need a campaign. Why? Well, because like I need to reach more customers. I need to be top of mind, and my competition is killing me out there. And so we decided to do a campaign called Urgency to call out the bullshit and to get people to do what they actually know how to do. You know, like there are tons of successful people out there, tons of people who know what it takes to do quality work, tons of people who know the value of planning and strategy, etc., but absolutely avoid it because they live in a perpetual state of urgency. And that's the new normalized kind of state of our industry, of all industries, and as you were saying, kind of lifestyle in general. And so we did a campaign. The campaign was quite simple. Seems to have resonated with a lot of people. Campaign was basically making it as relevant as possible. And so we were finding quotes from each of us in DUCKLIFE, and we were kind of putting it out there and calling it out. My quote was, "It's only urgent because you're a bad leader." Yours was?
It's only urgent because you don't have a strategy.
Precisely. And so why do I think that you're a bad leader if it's urgent? Because if you're a good leader, nothing is essentially urgent because you're setting the vision for the organization. You're setting the objectives of the organization. You're setting the budgets of the organization. You're setting the roadmap for the organization. You are setting kind of the overarching strategy of the business. And so nothing should be urgent because everything can be prepared and planned or forecasted ahead of time.
100%.
And just to be clear, if there is a trend that seems to pop up on TikTok, you can be reactive and participate, so long as you have a strategy to be reactive.
Yep.
Right? There are recipes and ways to do it. For one, someone's at the door for you.
Another person
to interrupt the podcast.
Any more deliveries, huh? That's fine, don't worry. We just can't afford a studio yet, so we don't have our own private rooms.
We need to talk to Rich.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Did you order dessert? So just so we know. Oh, you already got dessert. Okay.
Very good. But yeah, also
this is the part if Jojo was here, she'd call me a bully.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but the just on that as well, we talk about a strategy. Right. So when it comes to the urgency of not having a strategy and not being able to, and always being reactive, is that reactive content or reactive kind of campaign work really should only make up 10, 20% tops of your kind of marketing plan. And just by not having a strategy in place, you know,
but reactive. But sorry, on that point, sorry to cut you off. When you react to things, there is a way to react to it.
Exactly.
Right? There's a capacity that's available within the organization or your agency that you've preempted. There's a budget that's associated to that. There's a whole series of steps that you've kind of articulated that you can kind of follow through with.
Exactly.
You're reacting to something, but the way you react is already planned. Just the same way a firefighter reacts to a fire. Just the same way an ambulance shows up when there's an emergency, they're preprepared for it. Right? And so that's what we're saying.
And the preparedness comes from everything else in my day-to-day. You know, how I'm trying to grow my business, how many customers I'm trying to reach, you know, what it is the revenue that we're trying to bring in, those numbers have already been forecast. Exactly. The strategy has already been formulated. There is already a plan, a calendar, a system in place. Therefore, even if everyone has to drop everything for 24, 48 hours to react to a golden opportunity that only comes once in our lifetime, then we can do, because everything else is going to continue operating as normal. The problem is the large part of that strategy piece is not in place. So when everyone kind of jumps onto the latest hot thing and trend, everything else falls apart. So then you have a perpetual state of kind of urgency in the sense of, our growth numbers are dropping because we stopped doing performance marketing over here because we had a budget dip for 2 weeks. Now my social media my numbers have dropped off there because, you know, we pivoted what we were doing on social because I had to use the designer over here for something else. And that's one of the major issues of not having that strategy and plan.
I want to ask you a question and be as honest as you can. I think you're on the same page as me on this, but like, I actually also believe that most organizations out there don't have a strategy.
No, they don't. Well, whether they don't have a strategy or they have a strategy because it's a box checking exercise that they believe they have to go through, but then maybe they shelve it or it sits on Google Drive or whatever it is, the Microsoft OneDrive for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I beg to kind of I would love for people to prove us wrong and to share their business strategies, but I'm almost certain that the majority of the organizations that reach out to us, as well as organizations in our community, don't have a robust kind of relevant strategy in place for how they run their business, how they run their marketing, how they run their budgets, etc. I think they have high level strategies, which are like, this is our GMV target, our revenue target, this is our marketing budget. I think they have high level views of the economics of their organization,
which they tend to have built and put in place for a meeting, or a presentation that they needed to get running. Exactly. Whereas, like, operationally, one of the biggest things that we talk about when it comes to strategy stuff is it simple enough and easy enough to follow and evolve as new data inputs come on a kind of weekly basis.
No,
and a lot of the time, from what we see, it's not the case, and we end up getting so reactive and so buried in the day-to-day that we forget about the original plan and strategy that we may have set out with good intentions at the start of the year.
And I'll give a fantastic example. I had a call this morning with one of our clients, and if this person watches this podcast and knows that I recorded it today, he'll know that I'm talking about him. But a fantastic example. This morning, I got a call from one of our clients, and they were saying, hey, the quote that you quoted us for this video that we want to do, it's just way too expensive. I don't think we can do it. I said, okay, do you want to know why it's expensive? Because I have all the details. I can tell you why it's expensive. And so I listed out all the reasons, right? So the video had a studio needs, it had like set production needs, it had like actors, it had wardrobe, it had makeup and hair, it had animations, it had motion, it had so many pieces to it, because the reference that they gave us for that video was a video that they saw online.
Yeah.
And they want to do something similar. And we quoted the reference because the reference had all these elements to it. And it came to a certain price. And now that price is more expensive than what they're willing to pay for based on their budgets. So they have a budget in place for each month or how much they're supposed to spend. And they're aware of what they can and can't do from a financial perspective, but not what they can and can't do from an actual feasibility standpoint, because they don't do this in-house. My response to them was, listen, like, if that's what you want to achieve as a video, that's what it's going to cost. What I would suggest we take as the next step, and this is a good exercise for everyone to do if you're leading an organization, is what is the objective? What is it that you want to do? And what is your budget? Yeah. Just start with the basic fundamentals.
Yeah.
If your objective is to create a piece of content that basically talks about 1, 2, 3 and serves this audience, and it's done on these channels, and your budget is, let's say, X amount of dirhams, tell us what that is, and we'll craft a solution for you. This way, you still get what you want. You still create the piece of content. It still fits into your budget. Yeah. Everything makes sense. So rather than take the lazy route and just say, hey, here's a reference of what I want to achieve, we need to also educate our customers, and our customers need to educate kind of themselves a little bit to say, you know what is my objective? And what is it that I need to do? And let me set a budget. I think inherently, a lot of startups, a lot of mid-sized companies, even large organizations that we've dealt with, don't like to vocalize a budget because they're afraid that we're just going to, run for the maximum cost.
Yeah.
Right? But fundamentally, if they tell us what the brief is and we understand what their budgets are, and they're comfortable with that budget, and we do end up hitting that budget, so what?
Yeah.
Right? And if we undershoot and we get it lower, great.
Do you know what happens if you get it lower and you undershoot it and you deliver a great piece of work? What does that client do? Probably come back to you with another brief.
Precisely. And so it's in everyone's interest to be forthcoming, to be open, to be planned, and to be strategic. To play all your cards. The problem with the agency-client relationship is everyone thinks that they're going to fuck the other person.
Well, we spoke about this, right? We had a podcast about this. The lack of trust, it's completely bullshit. Yeah. It's devastating in terms of what it creates. But speaking to that, when you're talking about like a brief and outline, that's one of the other challenges, right? Where what we see quite often, people come to us with something that they've seen that they like online. And this speaks to something you said the other day. You're not the customer. So because you aesthetically like something that you saw online, that is not necessarily, probably most unlikely, not a representation of who you're trying to reach and who your product is for. So that's a really bad starting point as a reference. It can be a creative kind of thought starter, but it's never kind of a guide in terms of a brief, which comes to that point around why something's urgent, which was another one, which I think was Jojo's quote, was it JoJo's or Rwan's, which is you don't have a brief. It's only urgent because you haven't like submitted.
You haven't thought it through.
You haven't thought it through, and that is kind of speaking to, you know, setting out exactly what it is you're trying to achieve. And I would even go as far as saying, just to counter kind of what you said, you don't necessarily have to articulate what those channels are. Allow like your agency or your partner to kind of suggest how best to reach the audience to achieve the objective that you are within the budget capabilities that you're asking for.
Yeah.
Because certain channels, even though they might seem the best, like, or the, you know, kind of where the most audience is, they might not be the most economically viable for you, nor might they suit the creative solution that's put in place. So unless you're putting in the work and really thinking quite carefully around what it is that you're trying to achieve, your starting point shouldn't be, I want to run this type of content on TikTok because it was shared to me and it really appealed to me. That's a really shitty like brief.
And I think fundamentally part of the issue that we have specifically based on what we're exposed to is people seem to be very opportunistic rather than strategic. And I think successful businesses are able to do both.
Yeah, I was about to say there's a place for both of those.
Exactly. And so the problem is today is most organizations establish some sort of very minimum viable marketing solution. So let's coin that term. Let's just call
minimal
it
viable
MVM,
marketing.
minimum viable marketing, which means they probably launch their social media channels. They have a very basic, very badly set up digital marketing kind of arm where tracking and attribution and optimization is like not really there. And then they just do some basic content or CRM or emailers or whatever, right? And they believe that that's marketing. They believe that that's where the buck stops. And then all of a sudden somebody knocks on their door and says, hey, I can get you a bridge banner, or hey, did you see what your competition is doing? Or hey, did you hear that, you know, I don't know, you have competition coming to market in 6 months, or, you know, oh, we just found out that, you know, we have high churn, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have these triggers that just get introduced to a conversation, and then these guys just react, and they react like crazy. And as a result, they do these tentpole campaigns or tentpole marketing stunts that give them the momentary tick, you know, a dopamine hit, and that's very short-lived. And then they kind of get frustrated with their agency, they get frustrated with their marketing team in-house, they get frustrated, you know, from a top-down perspective, the leaders of the organization get really kind of frustrated with the performances of their companies. Instead of totally empowering their marketing team, giving them a view of the world, approving budgets and the ability to make decisions on those budgets, rather than create an environment where marketing organizations can think strategically and consistently. The leaders of organizations these days are very top-down controlling, with no trust within their own organizations and no trust externally with their third-party agencies. So, you know, how was the Urgent campaign received? So anyone that I know, and I think that you know, that works in the agency world, has said, fuck, thanks guys. Somebody finally said it out loud.
Well, hold on, yeah, 2 parts to that. Some people were thanks guys said and responded. Yeah. But we're in a passive market.
Yeah.
There's so much passive. Like,
there's so much passive.
Under the table.
But I got all those WhatsApps.
Yeah, I got some. Like, I got WhatsApps.
I think the most vocal as usual is Hisham from Freedom. He's like, fuck, bro. Seriously? Like, I think he really, really liked it. It really kind of spoke to him. And then there were all the clients that we have who kind of asked us, hey, are you talking about us? And we're like, absolutely. We're absolutely talking about you guys, and that's okay. Yeah. You know?
But also just on that, like, even though we speak to clients, we like, you know, we do kind of speak about these real experiences. One thing, and I said it on LinkedIn, I think you said it as well, we're both guilty.
No, I'm a culprit. Like, I'm a culprit.
100%. So urgency, even though we put this campaign out,
we're projecting.
Yeah, exactly. What annoys you is within you. Like, trust us, guys. Like, I know that and I did it this morning to the guys. I didn't say the word urgent. I said I needed it today. I didn't use the language urgent. Paolo's laughing because I requested it to him. But the point is that it is a bit last minute. However, that's part of a broader plan. There is a plan that's already ongoing, and this request is just more of a reactive thing within that. So it kind of just to justify myself.
Yeah. And listen, I think we're all human, and I think we also kind of communicate externally what we believe are better versions of ourselves as well, right? So I think the agencies that we know definitely are aligned. The clients that we know, we're all aligned.
Yeah.
I think internally for us as an organization, it's going to help us kind of be a bit more mature and operate kind of in a less urgent manner as well. But fundamentally, I think the underlying message was we can all do better. We all deserve better. And it's not just DUCKLIFE complaining. I think organizations and brands can do better. It'll better serve them. Yeah. It'll help us help them. And as a lifestyle, as a way of working, living in a perpetual state of anxiety does not produce optimal work. Right. And so one of the kind of symptoms or kind of effects of urgency is your ability to be have liberty of creativity, have liberty of problem solving, have liberty of, and sure, a lot of people will say, yeah, but some people do their best work under pressure. That might be true, but it's not sustainable. And you can only create so many good pieces of work under urgency to the point where you'll burn out, to the point where you have creative like blocks, to the point where you can have kind of just lack of quality in your work. You get tired. It's normal.
There's a great Instagram handle. You've seen the sketch of Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Is his name Paco Rabo or something? Yeah. He does
30 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 3 minutes, and 5 minutes or whatever.
Sketches out Spider-Man, and that's how a creative feels. But that's not just a creative, right? This rings true to, someone comes to me and says, I need a strategy and we have to have this up and live and the campaign live within kind of 2-3 weeks. I'm like, what are we going to write a strategy like? It's, there's got to be a bit of thought put into that. Help me understand what it is you're trying to achieve. But it applies across everything. If everything is urgent, and the best work, I think you might get the odd home run, but you're not going to get consistency in those home runs.
I think the last piece that we should probably talk about is why people don't invest in strategy. And I think as a person who's always kind of tried to avoid strategy himself, like me, I think what I seem to start to understand is people don't see the value in it. They don't understand how it's going to actually help them today, right? So there's the return on investment debate, right? Yeah. So I'm going to sit here, I'm going to put a bunch of my leaders in a room. We're going to spend half a day, 3 days, a workshop, I don't know, whatever the hell it is. And that time is lost from execution, from direct impact on your business, on your bottom line. And so a lot of organizations or leaders or CEOs or marketing leaders or whatever just don't see the value in creating a strategy, right? Because it doesn't give you a tangible return on investment. And the more time you take away from somebody being able to execute, in theory, is a loss of revenue.
But and what is the strategy?
It's guiding principles. It's how to operate. It's a process. It's all those things together. They're basically ways of working that make you more efficient and in line with the objectives of the business.
Yeah. So strategy. Yeah, exactly. So strategy to me gives a group of people direction, focus, and clarity as to what they're going to work on. And a strategy is never a fixed document. It is, and ideally in an ideal world, it should be a very kind of loose, organic, changing. And a minimal viable strategy is something you should for sure have in place. If you talk about minimal viable, whether that's 3 to 6 pages, just of clear alignment, the objectives, what the key numbers that we're going to measure, what those successes are. Like, what are we saying in terms of the communication? Like, who is it that we're going after? What's our assumption? What's our hypothesis of who we're going after and where we're going to get the most traction? And what is our focus going to be in terms of that messaging over the course of the next 3 months? That's not a hard piece of work to sit and do. And yes, there is assumptions to that. I think going back to the leadership piece is, if you agree and have that alignment and direction as focus as a core team, and you agree that that's an approach you're going to take, then you should give it time to be able to have that approach. And if you need to pivot it, then you can get in the room and pivot it. But not just throw at a marketing team this constant state of, okay, we're dropping here, this number's dropping here, we need to do this here. Because then, of course, the strategy is completely fucking worthless and you may as well not do it. And that's why people don't see any kind of value in it to an extent. Because one, people don't want to do the work or take the time to actually sit in a room and collaborate and think about what it is they're trying to do and do the hard work. And it's the thing about marketing. The hard work really is all in the upfront. The hard work of marketing is in the planning. It is in the thinking. It is the application of the craft of marketing to achieve what you're trying to do as a business. That's the hard bit. The execution is fucking great fun. I love executing.
You think there's a lack of discipline in organizations? That's why strategies don't
I mean, I wouldn't survive. I wouldn't say it's in absolutes. I think there's a lack of discipline in every individual, no matter what, right? We're not perfect human beings. And I think that extends then into kind of organizations. And I think at an organization level, the lack of discipline that comes down into kind of junior levels is more of a leadership issue. So, discipline is something that...
But wouldn't you argue that in the past, maybe people, I mean, it's an assumption, I don't know, but in the past, maybe strategy had more weight?
Yeah, it did, because it was deemed more sexy, but strategy is just like par for the course. Like when you think of strategy, people see it as this kind of airy-fairy, fluffy piece of work where you've got a load of strategists sitting in a room getting paid like big bucks, which they don't, to write and like create presentations. And it's not.
And so
it's not that, right?
And so the perception of strategy is not valuable.
Exactly. But
based on that.
Because strategy has been pulled away as this kind of like separate to do and this kind of piece of work that needs to live before we do anything else. And you could argue to an extent, and I know, like, even when we think about our process, we always say, well, look, we need to start with the strategy because we need a starting point. And we try to make that kind of timeline to do that as short as possible. But fundamentally, when you think about what that strategy document is setting, and it's going back to those points, it's bringing focus to a group or to an organization. If you're a marketeer, you need to understand what the product's doing, what the financials are doing, where the business is trying to pivot to, and how we're like operating, where the hiccups are, like where's the pitfalls that you should kind of avoid, and fundamentally bring that together into a document or into kind of like a room, which then formulates a marketing plan. Because a strategy piece is really just trying to understand all the different moving parts of a business. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, marketing strategy is kind of developed in isolation of all of the fundamental inputs of a business.
All
right. So what is the pricing strategy of this organization? Is that not thought about? Sometimes, a lot of the time, it's not. I want to run this cool, quirky campaign because I think it's going to do really well for the business. But is that really going to communicate what where kind of the C-suite is like pushing for the organization to grow? Maybe not. Is it going to communicate this really good piece of like this really good product feature that we've developed? It's taken 6 months to build. Like, have we spoken to product to understand kind of what they're kind of releasing and what the inputs might be? Not all the time. And that's ultimately the job of the marketer and the strategist. Go and speak to all the different stakeholders in the business. And that's what their meeting room should be. It shouldn't be a room full of strategy or C-suite. Maybe it could, but ultimately it's a room where you have the relevant stakeholders in where you can then download all of the information as to where the business is going, and then you build your marketing or communication strategy off the back of that to then take the business to the next level. The isolation that it's currently created in is part of the problem. So and then you end up with creative marketing fluff, which people don't like.
Absolutely. And I think one thing I also want to add to this kind of conversation that we didn't mention yet is, a company is always communicating every day. Mm-hmm. And a company is communicating on multiple different fronts with multiple different messages to multiple different audiences. But there are a couple of things that kind of are quite consistent that seem to evade kind of strategy or planning, and we are at the kind of receiving end of that kind of mismanagement. Is, in any given year, calendar year, your brand has, let's say, brand campaigns, seasonal campaigns, cultural campaigns, mm-hmm. Marketing campaigns, promotional campaigns, et cetera. And you should be able, almost with your eyes closed as a marketing leader, to understand what you need, when you need them, based on these kind of fixed moments within your plan, within your strategy. And we were laughing about it, but mm-hmm. we did a post about it. Like, Ramadan happens every year.
Yeah.
Back to school happens, every end of August.
Yeah.
Like Dubai Shopping Festival happens at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Right, in December. Black Friday happens every end of November.
Yeah.
Right? And these things are consistent, and they'll always happen. Mm-hmm. And the fact that organizations, brands, start talking about Ramadan a month before it happens, and then asks agencies to pull rabbits out of their ass.
Yeah.
not out of a hat. Is also like in my opinion, like a huge disrespect to your field, huge disrespect to your brand, huge disrespect to your relationship with the agencies. And we need to get to a point where we can hold each other accountable. And I think that's a big reason or big motivator behind the urgent campaign. It's guys, girls, like, come on, we know better. Come on. You know what I mean? And don't be upset if your brand underperforms or your campaigns underperform if you don't give them a chance to succeed.
Exactly.
And so hopefully the campaign resonated with everybody. Hopefully people see this as an opportunity to change how we operate, all of us collectively, DUCKLIFE included. And if people have opinions about the kind of urgent campaign, just give us a call, reach out, tell us what you think. And if it offended you, I'm super happy. And so let's try to build a world where things are not urgent. And I
actually want to just speak before we build a world where things are not urgent.
What do you want to share?
No. So I was just going to go through it. I want to just quickly go through each post and just like look at just explain each one. Very, very high level, but give a tangible takeaway. Other thing, we're going into summer now. So if your business really only operates in the Dubai summer, right? Even though, hopefully you've got more of a global audience, then what do you do during summertime? You don't cut ties with your partners. You actually use that time to fucking do the work in order to hit like the summer months better. Come on, I'm fucking saying it.
No, say it. I'm laughing because
it blows my mind. Like, because I know what's going to happen. You're going to come to, and I would love you come to us in August. Come to us in August. It's no bueno, right? we're not going to be dealing with that. Anyway, okay, you've already gone through the leadership one. You haven't replied in 2 weeks. This is a really good one, right? From Amber, right? Because you do the work and you send stuff off because it's urgent and you're like, and that's because you've had a bit of heat either in a morning meeting or you've forgotten to respond to an email and then you don't respond. But you want us to respond immediately, and if we don't, then you'll phone us or you WhatsApp us or you do something. That's unacceptable. So communication is normally one of the breakdowns as to why you end up having urgency within kind of your kind of day-to-day, because you're unable to communicate or have the discipline internally to communicate regularly. That was one. You do the next one. Paolo, you do. You don't understand production.
Oh man, that one kills me. That one kills me. Hey man, it's just a video. Like, what do you mean you can't do it in 24 hours? What do you mean? It's so easy. You just shoot and then you put everything on your MacBook Pro and you press shuffle and then you get a video out of it. You know what I mean? That's what they think happens.
But what I would say is on the agency's part, rather than just shitting all over the clients, is that maybe we don't do a good enough job of breaking down and explaining the differences between production and what it means. And that rings true not just to us, but also kind of like to the broader piece. Like that's the thing that's super important. So agency folk, like there's education and we need to do more there.
I think the one by Charbel is really good.
Hey, we did the JoJo one. You haven't briefed it in.
It's only urgent because you don't know what you want. Charbel's.
Yeah.
Now this one I love. I love this one because this happens all the time. It's like, hey man, we want to work with you. You guys are so fucking cool. Like what we want to do something crazy. Like define crazy. Like we want to go viral. You know what I mean? Yeah. They don't know what they want. They don't know what the outcome should be, right? Even if you end up having tons of views and tons of engagement that doesn't translate into revenue, then like, yeah, but still like it didn't work for us. Okay, so you didn't want to go viral. What you wanted was to drive revenue or bottom line. No, but we want to blow up. We want this to be huge. Yeah, but define huge. And so a lot of people can't distinguish what they want really from their agency, what they want really from a campaign, what they want really from a marketing kind of initiative, etc. They can't really define it. I think that's fundamentally something that's wrong with a lot of kind of the briefs that we get.
And I'd also say to this as well, when people don't know what they want, like the best thing about articulating the objectives and what it is that you want is that as a business, marketing doesn't have to be this big song and bells and whistles of large campaigns. Don't get me wrong, we love large campaigns. If you want to give us the work to do large campaigns, we'll do them. But the point is there are small wins that you can take on a day-to-day basis. And you don't just have to go and develop a huge marketing campaign to do that. Is your CRM, is your kind of retention system in place? Have you got multiple touch points, communication? How do you communicate to customers if there's a problem? Like, are all the basics of marketing in place before you go?
9 times out of 10, no.
No, of course not. So a good takeaway there is you don't know what you want. So go away and think about what you want objectively. Write down your objectives, but then also think, is there other ways that I can achieve this?
Yeah, but what typically happens when we ask that question is to go see somebody else who doesn't ask them that.
I know. But anyway, that's the takeaway. If you need more advice, you can message us.
Yeah, so sorry, just a point on that. just because we ask you some basic fundamental questions, it shouldn't mean that we're taking the wrong approach. We're just asking you to help yourself, right? Yep. And I think a lot of the people that we do business with it typically is a friction point. We try to push all of our clients and all of our partners to understand that we want to do things properly. We want to have a specific rationale towards things, right? Yeah. But a lot of the agencies out there, I think the majority of them don't necessarily, go through that as a process. They'll just take the brief and they'll create, which, probably that's the right way to do business if you're an agency, if all you care about is bottom line. But I think fundamentally for the brands, the message here is, really, 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 really think about what it is you want to achieve. Really think about, whether or not you can articulate what success looks like for you internally. If you're managing upwards and managing down, really define that so that when you come to us, we can help you achieve that. If we don't know what the real underlying motivation is, we're not going to craft the right solution for you.
Exactly. And that then speaks to this next one, which was with Rohan. You can't give proper feedback. Now, feedback's a really, really important piece for like the agency world, but there's two parts to this. The reason it's so important to craft a really good brief, which is Jojo's piece, is because you need to understand what the inputs and the objectives that you're trying to achieve. That's number one.
Yep.
The reason that's so important when it comes to feedback is because that is your vantage point for when you are given feedback. Because when you're pulling together feedback from a client perspective, and you're objectively looking at it to see, does this achieve, or do I think this will achieve and hit the objectives that we set out in the initial brief? And if the answer is no, that's a super valid feedback, and you obviously explain why. Second to that, when you're internalizing creative work, you have a set number of stakeholders that you probably need to run the process by. And you might want to garner their input, or you might want to run it like a dictatorship and say, screw them, I've already got their input. But fundamentally, you need to manage that process internally so that you bring together consolidated feedback that avoids subjectivity. So you do the filtering of subjectivity, and then you provide that back to your agency partner, because you waste a ton of our time and your kind of account time by not doing that process that way.
And do that process quickly.
Exactly.
Creativity and good work has momentum. When you remove momentum from a process, when you take too much time to form an opinion on something and then give your feedback a little too late, the creative process, the workflow is absolutely interrupted and is detrimental to the outcome. Exactly. And so if you're going to give feedback, give us good feedback, proper feedback, objective feedback, and do it quickly.
Exactly. Yep. Oh, the final one. You haven't budgeted for it.
Man, nobody budgets for shit anymore. No one budgets
for anything.
The brief. Hey, I want this. Well, what kind of money you got? Oh, man, I have no budget for this. It's out of budget.
So here's the thing. It's out of budget? Here's the only takeaway that I want to have from this. DUCKLIFE, we've been client side. We actually we run the Bueno ourselves. We're not a fucking agency. We're not a typical agency. And even if, regardless of the agencies, this whole like lack of trust and bullshit that sits there of the, having to pad accounts, not wanting to share budgets, like not play hands, it's fucking pointless. You're wasting everyone's time. And it's far better to then say, this is what I'm trying to achieve, and this is the money that I have to achieve it. Can you figure it out? If the answer is no, okay, you can't work with us because our time is valuable. If the answer is yes, we'll give you a solution. It might not be all the song and bells and whistles that you want, but here's why. But that starting point is far healthier. And if we come in under budget, like I said earlier on, you're probably then going to want to come work with us again, especially if the piece of work is really good and you're hitting your objectives off the back of it. So stop wasting everyone's time, including your own, when it comes to a lack of budget or lack of sharing of numbers. And that's it.
That's it.
Yeah. Oh, who's that guy? Oh, no.
By the way, just for the record, the guy, what he was looking at was himself. Anyways, all right, man. If you were offended by what we spoke about, I'm sorry, but the objective is that we wanted to put it out there. We wanted to have this conversation openly. If you have a conflicting opinion, if you think that what we're saying doesn't make any sense and you disagree with us, then please tell us. But in the meantime, just remember that nothing is urgent. Nothing is urgent. It doesn't have to be urgent, and we all deserve better. And that's hopefully the underlying message that we're trying to get across, and hopefully people appreciated it. Thank you.
I love your philosophical endings.
They have to be.
Yeah, they're very powerful.
Talk shit all the time. Why don't we just look at your face
you decimated everyone at the investor debate.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Literally, we'd all sat there having that conversation. You killed us.
I didn't kill you. I was just bringing you back home.
Oh man, it was probably the most shared part of the conversation. Oh yeah, I totally relate.
Yeah, see, it means shit to people.
Yeah, true. All right.
Peace.